Hello. All right, everyone. I hope you're having a good day. Before we dive into the content, as usual, we're just going to give a couple more minutes for people to join the session here live. And while we're waiting for a few extra people to join, I'll just quickly introduce our speaker for the ROAS Masterclass today. Some of you will have already undoubtedly come across his LinkedIn content, I'm sure. And I'm very glad to have Tomasz Abbott-Wieczorek, aka Tom, with us here today to talk about maximizing Google Ads efficiency, basically. So Tom, first of all, how was my pronunciation of your name there? Was it right, or did it need some work?
Tomasz, yeah, but you can call me Tom. Yeah, welcome everybody. Good to be here. Looking forward to it. Thanks, James, for having me on.
Yeah. You're based in Manchester as well, and I know we were trying to discuss like making it work in person, but it's just it seems like, you know, virtual event is the easiest way to go. But yeah, we did catch up in person at the Lunio office at the Performance North event recently, and I know you've got on your list like you want to get kind of more public speaking events and stuff. And have you been having any conversations with the other groups in the UK about any events coming up?
Yeah, so I'm going to be speaking at AdWorld in October in Bologna in Italy, which is going to be super cool. I know a lot of the US PPC influencers are going to be there as well, which is quite nice because normally the US influencers don't come to many of the EU events. So that'll be cool to meet a lot of kind of PPC people I've spoken to on LinkedIn there. And yeah, I've been doing quite a few podcasts with other PPC, agency owners, freelancers. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
Nice. Is that conference, Adrian going to that one as well? The AdWorld, is it?
Yeah, he's speaking at it. So yeah, looking forward to seeing him speak as well. It'll be the first time I meet him, which will be super cool. Yeah. Shout
out Adrian, former webinar guest. If you didn't catch our PMAX webinar with Adrian, you can check that out in the Lunio archives. Have you been watching any of the Olympics that have been going on? Like, you've been following Team GB?
Unfortunately not. Just only podcasts, only Diary CEO episodes is kind of my jam. So yeah, just unfortunately have to always learn something,
Yeah. Non-fiction only, like keeping it productive. So we have had a few more people join now. So I'll just kind of get going with some of the housekeeping. So just again, welcome everyone. Very glad to have you here, either live or watching back on demand. And I just wanted to give a special welcome to anyone out there who's been at some of our previous webinars this year. I'm very glad to have you with us once again. For those that don't know me, I'm James. I'm the content manager here at Lunio, and I'll be hosting the session today. We're aiming to get through the content in around 45 to 50 minutes. And that will leave us with around 10 minutes at the end for a Q&A, which I'll say more about in just a second. Just a few other bits of housekeeping. We are recording the session today, and it'll be available to watch back on demand. And if you have any questions for Tom, please pop them into the Q&A tab that you can see in Goalcast here in the top right-hand side. And we'll try and get around to as many of those as we can at the end of the session. It would also be really helpful if there are questions that you can see in the Q&A tab that you like or that you're interested to know the answer to as well. You can upvote your favorite questions that you're interested in, and then we can prioritize those when we get to the Q&A at the end. Just to let you know, we'll also have our team here at Lunio behind the scenes responding to some of those questions that are submitted as well. One other important thing to point out at the outset is next to the Q&A tab, you can also see a Docs tab here in Goalcast. And throughout the session today, I will be directing your attention there at relevant parts so you can get more context, articles, free resources, tools that relate to some of the content that we'll be covering. In the Docs tab, you can also find the links to Tom's LinkedIn profile, and I highly recommend following him if you aren't already, because he's posting a lot of useful stuff, tips, tricks, content every week. So be sure to give him a follow. We will also be running a few audience polls during the session, which you can vote on in the polls tab, which will open in just a second. So please do give us your responses there. You should see a notification pop up whenever a new poll is open for responses, and you can respond just by clicking on the polls tab and submitting your answer. So on that note, I'm just going to bring up our first poll today on screen here, and I'll just open that and share here. Just to clarify, the other polls today won't appear on the screen. You'll just go to the polls tab for those. But this first poll relates to one of the biggest headlines, or it might be better at this point to call it a punchline, with the amount of memes I've already seen about this already. Of course, I'm referring to Google's recent decision to U-turn on their third-party cookie deprecation policy. So the poll question is, how do you feel about that decision Google has made? I am, a cynic. Like, I think Google kind of waited until public opinion turned on privacy and then decided, it's in their best interest to kind of U-turn on this policy. But some people may have wasted some time in preparing for this, and now it's not going to be implemented. But Tom, what's your kind of top level take on this decision from Google?
Yeah, I think it was them definitely forcing our hand, right? It's kind of the first time I've seen Google really force our hand as PPC specialists to implement consent mode, to say cookies are going away, and kind of making such a big change so quickly. So I did kind of expect it to, as it got delayed, I did expect it to get delayed further. I personally think this is more of a delay, kicking the can down the road, than a, U-turn. But yeah, I don't know if it's going to change too much, day to day, apart from all the speakers at every event are probably going to have to rewrite their material for this year.
100%. Yeah, that's definitely going to happen. And just, looking at the poll responses from the audience that we've got here today, most people, either neutral or somewhat happy about that decision. It's certainly less headaches and complications for most people, which is always welcome. So that is all the housekeeping out of the way. So I'm just going to quickly bring up the agenda that we've got for today, just to talk everyone through what we'll be covering throughout the rest of the session. So let me just share this on the screen here. So we've got the kind of 8 main points that we'll be covering on the agenda today. Firstly, we'll be looking at how to enhance your conversion tracking, and we've got a helpful tool recommendation there when it comes to setting up enhanced conversions. Next, we'll talk about ad copy optimization, and I'll be running through the 10 ad copy commandments we put together here at Lunio in an article last year. After that, we'll cover image ad optimization, and Tom will be taking us through 2 great ad examples, and he'll be outlining what makes those so great and how we can apply those insights to our own ads. After that, we'll discuss how to optimize video ads. And again, we'll be dissecting a classic video example from Tai Lopez that some of you may remember seeing all over the internet and social media about 8 years ago, but we'll get into that at that point of the discussion. After that, we'll look at landing page optimization. And again, Tom has some really good examples of great landing pages that you can take inspiration from. And I've also got a helpful script recommendation that you can use to monitor changes in landing page conversion rates. And keep a close eye on those. Then we'll look at ways you can minimize waste through exclusions in Google Ads. And following on from that, Tom will give us some recommendations for negative keywords. And we also have a recommended Ngram tool from Optio that you can trial free for 30 days, which will analyze and highlight any keywords in your campaigns which are significantly underperforming. So those can be added to a negative list. And then lastly, we'll cover how you can uplift traffic quality and conversion rates by blocking invalid traffic with some supporting data from one of our Lunio clients at DeVry University in the US. As I mentioned before, when we're going through the content, when we get to the end, we will have the Q&A session. So if there's anything that comes up as we go through from slide to slide, just pop your question into the Q&A tab. We'll get around to it at the end. And also just a reminder to upvote your preferred or favorite questions as well. So that's it for the agenda today. So we'll get right into it with the first topic, which is conversion tracking. So we got a couple of memes on the side here, but Tom, could you just give us your top level take on the importance of getting conversion tracking right in 2024?
Yeah, well, I'll take the opposite of the common kind of phrases that are talked about in the industry right now, which is like, oh, you're going to be left behind if you don't become a level 100 final conversion tracking big boss, right? That's just not true at all. There's so many scenarios where you're not going to be doing the conversion tracking yourself. I mean, I think of it like being a Michelin star chef and you being a kind of normal main Michelin star chef, and then you're getting your pastry chef to do the conversion tracking to make the pastries, right? You can also make pastries, but you're probably not going to make them as good as a pastry chef who spends all day doing that one thing. Doesn't mean you're any less of a chef. It just means you're playing to everybody's strengths in a team, in an agency, in-house even. And that's the way I like to look at it. So a lot of the time I'll partner with tracking experts depending on the setup, because they can just do it better and quicker than me. And yeah, just get quicker results for my client, because ultimately, like, time is money, especially with conversion tracking.
Yeah, 100%. And we have got a quote on the screen here about conversion tracking from one of our previous webinar guests, Miles McNair, who I'm sure many of you know. And I think what Miles is alluding to here is the fact that the future of PPC is clearly in automation and AI. And that means that the data that you're now feeding into campaign algorithms is becoming more important than ever. So Tom, just quickly, what's your thoughts on Miles's quote here?
Yeah, kind of to add on top of it, there's a scale question as well. Like, how much are you spending? Are you spending 5-10 grand a month? Are you spending 100 grand a month? Like, there's such a range of accounts out there with different ad spend. And if you're moving things a couple of percentage points, either, you know, adding to conversions with enhanced conversions, you know, adding 5% more conversions maybe, or you're kind of, you know, reducing the CPA a couple of percent, like, you got to think about what impact is that going to have on the account based on the ad spend. So you've got to take into account scale as well. But on the whole, yes, you want to be feeding the algorithm with the best data possible, but sometimes don't let it get in the way of the actual ads, because I feel like they're neglected a little bit nowadays. And we've got some good examples today to go over.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into those examples. But just in the interest of comprehensiveness and completeness, I'm just going to present some quick information covering some of the fundamentals of conversion tracking. And also, I just want to highlight a few helpful videos and resources that might be useful to you if you're in a position where you're not able to work with a conversion tracking specialist or expert and you are implementing some of these things yourself. So firstly, just to talk about primary and secondary conversions very briefly, I appreciate some of you will already be aware of this and you already have fully set up all your primary and secondary conversions, but I think it's important just to quickly touch on this for those out there that may be less experienced with conversion tracking. And it's also always good to have a bit of a refresher on the fundamentals. So basically, primary and secondary allow you to separate the conversions that play a role in ad spend optimizations from the ones that are just there for reporting purposes. For example, if you are running an e-commerce business, direct purchases from your website via paid search would be considered primary conversions, while newsletter signups would be secondary conversions. And basically, having a larger pool of reliable primary conversion data is always a good thing. It gives you additional insights algorithms can learn from to better optimize bids and targeting. So it's well worth taking some time to make sure that you've got all your primary conversion bases covered and making sure that you're not missing anything there within your account. We don't have time to do a deep dive on this now, but if it's something that you want to understand in more detail and you want to look at the implementation of that, I recommend checking out the YouTube video from Darren Taylor in the Docs tab. And I'd also say it's worth subscribing to his channel as well, because he's put out loads of great Google Ads videos over the past couple of years now. And Tom, I know when we caught up about this yesterday briefly, you had mentioned a potential issue with some of the recommendations coming from Google Ad reps in relation to primary and secondary conversions. So could you just explain a little bit about what you've seen there?
Yeah, so this is really a conversation you have to have with your client or the account you're working on. Is what are their goals? What do they actually count? You know, whether it's a sale, whether it's add to cart, whether it's a page view, whether it's what we call like a soft conversion, like a page view and add to cart, where someone's not really actually buying anything, they're just showing interest, or it's like a harder conversion where it's somebody's actually buying something. So it's a purchase, it's a subscription. And you really need to understand from your client, like, what do they want to optimize towards? What is their ultimate goal in the account? And then set the conversion primary and secondary from that. And what I see a lot of Google reps a lot of the time recommending is to set page views and kind of those more soft conversions, which sometimes aren't that helpful for the algorithm. They recommend to set them as primary, which generally I wouldn't recommend. But again, it kind of goes on what are the goals of your client, right? But yeah, it's a common thing I see, common mistake I see PPCs making is setting like everything as primary goals. You know, if you don't want it to, if you don't think it's a valuable action for Google to optimize towards, you don't think it's the right customers for Google to optimize towards, you always want to be setting it as secondary. So then Google's basically ignoring it in terms of the bidding strategy.
Nice. And just to follow on from that, talking about mistakes that kind of often get made, one of the other big mistakes people often make with conversion tracking is only importing Google Analytics events as Google Ads conversions. Obviously, you can do that, but if you want to measure as many conversions as possible in the most granular detail that you can, you need to use the Google Ads tag. And this gives you the ability, as you can see on the slide here, to track view through, engage view, and cross-device conversions. Again, we don't really have the time today to go into detail on this or discuss the implementation of it. But again, we have included a video link in the Docs tab from YouTuber Ivan Mana, who goes through how to use, set up and implement the Google Ads tag to track conversions. And he's doing that via the new 2024 Google Ads interface to make the process a bit easier to follow along with. So moving on, just to very quickly just talk about enhanced conversions that we mentioned during the agenda. I'll talk a little bit about enhanced conversion, and also I'll just plug this tool, which is highlighted in the LinkedIn post from Chris Nightingale on the slide here. So Google introduced enhanced conversions in response to the kind of privacy focused changes that Apple were making, which they first introduced with iOS 14, and they've since continued to build on that. And essentially what enhanced conversions is doing is it turns first-party personal information submitted by visitors on your website, such as names and email addresses, into hash text before sending it on to your Google Ads account to make sure that it's privacy compliant. This means if that user leaves your site and returns at a later date to make a purchase, the conversion can still be attributed back to that original ad and landing page that viewer viewed on your site. Once set up correctly, you can see an uptick in conversions, especially on video campaigns. But as Tom mentioned previously, you know, I wouldn't expect more than a kind of 5% uptick in conversions on the higher end of this if you do implement it. It's certainly helpful to do, and it's recommended to do this, but just don't expect to be flooded with loads more conversions simply by implementing enhanced conversions. It is a bit of a technical setup, but a developer has created a really useful Chrome extension to help with this. And that's what's highlighted on the LinkedIn post from Chris Nightingale here. So I highly recommend using that to check that everything is working with the way that you set up enhanced conversions. And you can find a link to that Chrome extension in the Documents tab. So now we will move on to, well, in my opinion, some of the more interesting topics that we've got today. So now we'll be looking at ad copy optimization. So I come from a background in SEO and content and copywriting. So this particular area is close to my heart. And before we get into the 10 ad copy commandments, which are listed on the slide here, Tom, I just wanted to pass to you here to get your thoughts when it comes to refining headline and description copy and making sure that it is compelling enough to make people click.
Yeah, so a lot of these commandments are what I use every day in building ad copy for my clients and helping other PPCs improve their ad copy for their clients. One of the things I would say is super important is to always pull up the funnel your results, your social proof. That's something that a lot of clients, a lot of accounts miss out on. They have pretty generic ads and they have a really great landing page with all the results, social proof, you know, testimonials from clients. But people aren't going to see that until they end up landing on the landing page. But a lot of people don't get there, right? They don't get that far down the funnel. So actually pulling up all those things and thinking, if I was just someone who saw the ad, maybe clicked on it, but maybe bounced, and I was much higher up the funnel, you would still want those people to see the great results your client has got, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And one of the other things, like in addition to social proof, when we were speaking, Tom, I was kind of asking you, is there any tips you would give when it comes to working with ChatGPT, Gemini, and these other large language models? And obviously they can be useful for ad copy, but there are also some things that I think are worth highlighting as potential pitfalls and things to be mindful of if you are using ChatGPT and Gemini to kind of work with your ad copy. So could you talk through what those kind of potential pitfalls are?
Yeah, the main one that's super dangerous I see is if you're a PPC that's advertising in English and maybe English is not maybe your native language, it's maybe your second language, and you do speak it fluently, but sometimes when you're chucking the AI to write those bits of copy, that ad copy, sometimes some context can be missed. You know, the same way if I'm writing ads in Polish, for example, I could probably get by, but I would probably miss a lot of context there, and it would maybe sound a bit off. And that's a really dangerous thing I see a lot. Even you know, between UK and US ads, for example, you know, if I'm writing ads for a US client, then maybe I don't know quite all the cultural differences there, and it maybe just doesn't sound quite right. So you always want to make sure that it lands, you know, wherever you're targeting, whether that's US or, you know, a European country, for example. You always want to make sure it lands, and yeah, you can help that by checking with a local, you know, look at somebody on your team, find like a local translator in that region, get them to check it over. You know, it won't cost you much, but it can be a big uptick in your ad copy quality.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And the other thing I'd say, just in relation to using ChatGPT and Gemini, is that, yeah, it's good for iterating and coming up with variations of ads that are performing well already. But if you just become completely dependent on that and you don't, you know, make any further effort to develop your own copywriting skills, like, you are kind of doing yourself a disservice if you're fully reliant on ChatGPT to generate the copy for you. And also you kind of expose yourself to a certain level of risk of, you know, your ads and your ad copy just kind of seems the same as everyone else's, because everyone's kind of defaulting to using ChatGPT. And obviously those tools are going to continue to get better and more effective in the future, but I still do think it's important to kind of strengthen that muscle of writing ad copy from scratch. I know it's hard looking sometimes at a blank piece of paper and having to come up with original ideas. You know, it is challenging, but it's definitely worthwhile. Even in terms of being able to work with some of the outputs that you get from a tool like ChatGPT, you need to have that foundational skill set already. Again, ultimately, like, there is no secret formula to writing great ad copy. It is kind of a continuous process of writing, testing, and refining from there. But as I said, at Lunio, we've kind of documented these 10 ad copy commandments that you can use to steer your copy, your headlines and descriptions in the right direction. Again, we don't have time to go into each one of these commandments individually right now. Some of them are quite self-explanatory. Other ones you might be a bit more intrigued by, such as that first one, sell the sizzle and not the steak. If you are interested to find out what we mean by that, you can find a full explanation of each of these 10 points along with example ads in the Lunio blog within the docs tab. So be sure to go there and check that out if you're interested in upskilling your ad copy. So now we're going to move on and we're going to look at some ad examples. So specifically, first, we're going to be looking at static image ads. So I'll just share this slide. And the first thing to say here is you might notice that the two examples we're going to be looking at today are originally meta ads, but the principles we'll be talking about also apply to image ads that you might be including as part of your display or demand gen campaigns, because there is a lot of crossover between those two. So using the meta ad examples also allows us to see here the ad text along with the image at the same time, which wouldn't be possible with examples lifted from Google Ads. So Tom, you used to work for Huel and you were actually involved in the creation of this ad, meaning that you're the perfect person to speak to about this. So could you talk us through the kind of thought process behind this ad and what made it so effective for you and the rest of the team at Huel?
Yeah, so firstly, the reason I think Huel is such a great brand is it's so brand strong. You know, they know their values and they won't waver from them in terms of the product, in terms of the way they speak about the product, the ads. So that is really helpful. And if you don't have those clear brand guidelines from your client, you really need to get them. You need to speak to your client more often, ask them more questions, deep dive into like what they would like you to talk about, what they would not like you to talk about. And that's really where this was born from, where Huel was determined not to be seen as a meal replacement. That was a phrase they really wanted to not use. But obviously that's a big keyword, right? That people are going to convert on and search for. So we had to come up with some clever ways to kind of get around that and make some alternatives. And this is very similar to when you see people talking about the price of like a SaaS product and it's a coffee a day, or it's, you know, a coffee a week or a coffee a month, right? It's that alternative where it's like an alternative where people know it very, very well. And it just instantly in your mind, you're like, oh, okay, I get that. You know, you instantly understand it. And that's where this idea of alternatives and comparing it to real food rather than a meal replacement, right? Because it's just a much stronger comparison to make, and a much stronger alternative to make is, say, instead of having the meal deal, instead of having a traditional lunch, you can have this, and then it's hitting on the pain points, multiple pain points, like the time pain point. It's ready in 5 minutes. It's super nutritious. It costs less than a meal deal. And yeah, it's just really playing on the idea of like, you know what a meal deal is, most people straight away. And it's like getting over that initial hurdle sometimes of when somebody sees an ad, you have to kind of understand the ad. But when you look at alternative ads like this, where you're doing a comparison before and after is a classic example as well. You just know what they're talking about straight away, and you're much more likely to convert and just get it and think, okay, this is a great product.
Nice. And I think, was there, when you were speaking at the Performance North event recently, Tom, I think you mentioned another change that you made while you were at Huel in terms of, was it how the product was positioned on the landing page and in terms of showing the people what they would get as part of the complete package? Or am I misremembering that, or is that correct?
Yeah, so it was showing, for example, 24 bottles when you buy a 24 bottle pack of the ready to drink bottles of Huel that you see in a supermarket right now. When you buy a 24 bottle pack, I was changing the shopping image to show 24 bottles, because the issue was, and you see this with like so many products, when you look on shopping and you've got somebody selling a single bottle and it's £3, and then you're selling 24 bottles, but the image is just a single bottle image, you're like seeing two bottles, but one of them is £3, and then your one is like £50. And at a glance, people are like, oh, I'm just going to go with the cheaper one, right? So you need to show people what they get up front.
Yeah, that was a really interesting point. Like when you said it, I was just like, oh, it sounds so simple, but you can see how that just goes overlooked by so many brands. It's just not something that, you know, not everyone necessarily thinks about straight away. But we'll move on and we'll look at the second example that we've got here. So now we are looking at an example from Space Goods, who make a kind of mushroom coffee blend to enhance productivity and focus. On the slide here, just on the right-hand side, I've pulled out the copy that they had placed on the image itself because it was a bit hard to read on the screen grab on the left-hand side. And again, Tom, you weren't actually working for Space Goods. You weren't involved in the creation of this ad, but could you talk us through what you like about it and what people can learn from this particular ad?
Yeah, so following on from the showing what you get point, Space Goods does a really good job of that. They always show the free gifts, the kind of cup, the whirrer stirrer thing you get as well. Here they're talking about free gifts. They don't have it quite in this image. But yeah, they do a really good job of showing what you get. They're also making kind of an alternative here, but sparking curiosity, which is something that we've got in a few of the other examples as well, which is so important, is sparking curiosity, you know, creating hype around your product. And when you look at this, you think feeling spaced out, you think about magic mushrooms and all the connotations that come with that. And it sparked your curiosity. You're like, what is this? This is a bit mysterious. This is, you know, I don't know about this. Like, you know, let me click through and check this product out, right?
Yeah, and like when we spoke about this, like that's exactly what I thought, because I was targeted with a lot of these space goods ads, and initially like that I was kind of like, what is this? What's the products that they've got in here? And then, you know, I went in and researched on the landing page and said, oh, it's, you know, a drink for productivity and focus. But yeah, definitely very attention grabbing, and kind of sparks a bit of interest in the people that are seeing the ad. And also, I just wanted to give a shout out to Lewis Kemp for highlighting these examples at one of the Performance North events this year at the Lunio office. And also, while we're on this topic and while we're looking at meta ads, I also would highly encourage people to check out the Facebook ad library for image ad inspiration. So you can find a link to the Facebook ad library in the Docs tab. It was kind of created in response to the whole Cambridge Analytica scandal, where Facebook and Meta were under intense pressure to be more transparent and open about the ways in which advertisers were using their platform and the ads that they were running on the platform. So now they have literally this publicly searchable database where you can just go in, search for any brand, and you can see all the live ads that they've got on Meta, all the ads they've run in the past. I think it's archived up to, you know, 12 months or maybe slightly longer than that. But basically, if you're running display, demand gen, PMAX campaigns, you should definitely be looking to Facebook ad library as a source of inspiration. More than anything, to stay up to date with the latest trends leading brands are adopting in their ads. You know, brands like Space Goods, brands like Huel, all that information is now public, and you should definitely use it to your advantage when it comes to you know, generating ideas for image ads. So in just a second, rather than moving on to the next slide, I'm going to press play on a short video ad example from Tai Lopez, which I mentioned at the beginning, and I'm sure some of you will have seen before. Some of you might find it quite nostalgic, I think. I'll let the ad run for 30 seconds or so, and then I will pause it, and I'm going to pass over to Tom so he can dissect it for us and how we might be able to apply those learnings to our own video. And I can also see, I can already see, sorry, James in the comments saying in my garage. And yeah, I think he knows what's on the way here. So I'll play the video and then I'll pause it after 30 seconds.
Here in my garage, just bought this new Lamborghini here. It's fun to drive up here in the Hollywood Hills. But you know what I like a lot more than materialistic things? Knowledge. In fact, I'm a lot more proud of these 7 new bookshelves that I had to get installed to hold 2,000 new books that I bought. It's like the billionaire Warren Buffett says, the more you learn, the more you earn. Now, maybe you've seen my TEDx talk where I talk about how I read a book a day. You know, I read a book a day not to show off. It's, again, about the knowledge. In fact, the real reason I keep this Lamborghini here is that it's a reminder that dreams are still possible, because it wasn't that long ago that I was in a little town.
So we will leave the ad there, and I'll just pass over to you now, Tom. Let me just change the slide, because I know you've kind of shared a slide with us, so we can kind of get into picking apart what we can learn from Tai Lopez.
Yeah, I mean, this is really a masterclass in copywriting, right? And this was UGC 10 years ago. Before UGC, Tai Lopez pretty much created this casual pan on an iPhone. You know, he even said he struggled to film it because back then you couldn't just flip the camera. He couldn't actually see himself filming it, so he had to film it a bunch of times. And it just feels so casual. It doesn't feel like an ad. You know, nowadays, if you saw something like this, it probably would, but it really goes to show, look at the best in class in terms of ad copy and in terms of creative, and look at what big brands like Huel and Space Goods are doing, and look at, okay, what's next? You know, what can I test that might be big in 10 years, for example? And what Tai does so well here is he hits so many different pain points and also so many different trust signals in such a short amount of words, which is absolutely crazy. And this is why I love this example, because even though it's a video ad, you could literally apply this in your search ads, in your demand gen, in your YouTube campaigns, but even in your headlines and descriptions on search ads. So it's like straight away here, you're giving context, right? It's not like over there. It's not like which country I'm in. It's like here straight away in my garage. So you're like, okay, places it, you know exactly what the context is of the ad, right? And then it's Lamborghini. And then he talks about Hollywood Hills. And it's hitting all these different pain points. So if you didn't know what a Lamborghini is, you're probably going to know what Hollywood Hills is. And you're probably going to be like, again, sparking curiosity, piquing the interest, thinking, okay, this is interesting. I'm going to click through, see what this guy has to say, right? If you don't know what Lamborghini is, you probably know what Hollywood Hills is. If you don't know what Hollywood Hills is, you're probably going to be interested by him talking about his TEDx talk, right? It's like different. And because he's looking at probably such a wide audience with this ad, he's probably targeting most people, right? He has to put different trust signals that are going to appeal to all different like age range, all different genders, right? Like all a super wide variety of an audience. And that's why it works so well, because if you're not hooked on one of the trust signals, you're going to be hooked in, 3-4 lines in. And it's so dense as well, the copy here, like every single line you can just tell just hits really, really hard, but in a different way. And the conclusion of that is like, don't keep repeating yourself in headlines with the same point or the same pain point. You need to be hitting different pain points from your customers, right? And there's going to be a couple that you can get from your client, get from the accounts you work on. And yeah, just have a variety of pain points there, because not everybody is going to associate with one pain point or trust signal.
Yeah, 100%. I think, it's that moment where he does the kind of switch and then pans to the bookshelf behind him, where the ad kind of, it really does hook you in a bit at that point, and you kind of think it's going in one direction and he takes it in another direction, and it kind of intrigues you to continue watching. For anyone that does want to watch the ad in full, maybe you want to reminisce about the good old days when Tai Lopez was at the height of his notoriety, you can check out the full YouTube link. The link to the full ad is in the docs tab. I think it's like 4 minutes long. We just don't have time to play it all today. If you're after other tips and advice when it comes to creating solid opening hooks, like Tom was just saying, check out our PPC efficiency playbook in the docs tab. And when you're looking at that efficiency playbook, if you skip to the chapter that we created in collaboration with Silvio Perez, who is the founder of Ad Conversion, he's a real expert when it comes to video campaigns. And he has some great advice in that playbook when it comes to iterating and testing those opening hooks at scale while keeping your costs down at the same time. So it's well worth looking into that. But we'll move on here in the interest of time, and we will talk about landing page optimization, because the reality is even the best ad in the world can't save a bad landing page. If you do not get conversion rate optimization right, it quickly becomes a major driver of inefficiency, which ultimately limits your ROAS. It is very easy to get caught in the trap of putting the majority of your time and attention into the Google ad side of things and forget about the other parts of the process, and kind of forget to really drill down on your landing pages. So we are going to look at a few specific landing page examples that Tom's highlighted. But before we look at those examples, I also just wanted to highlight a really helpful landing page anomaly script that was recently built by Mark Cornelius. And basically this script will check all the landing pages in your account daily. It will monitor them for any significant changes in conversion rates, and then it will send you an email alert if there is an anomalous change in conversion rates on one of your landing pages. And that essentially will help you spot and fix issues quickly. Well worth setting up, in my opinion. You can find the link to that script and to Mark's original LinkedIn post in the Documents tab if you're interested in implementing that. So let's go now and look at some real-world examples of landing pages and what we can learn from them. For those that are interested, you can find the links to the 2 landing pages that we're using as examples today in the Documents tab if you want to view the landing page in full on your own browser. But Tom, could you first of all just introduce the brand here and just outline what elements can we see on the page here that make this a really solid landing page for a PPC campaign?
Yeah, so Real is a supplements brand in the UK. And what's so amazing about this landing page is everything's above the fold. Like you literally have all the information you need to make a purchasing decision above the fold, right? Like, you know, whether you're going to buy it above the fold straight away. And that's the thing, you know, if you look at your kind of bounce rates and people clicking through an ad and then maybe only spending a few seconds on a landing page, it's the same way. Like, a lot of us will only look above the fold before you scroll on Google, on the search results, right? So you only look at the first few ads, first 1 or 2 organic searches. People treat landing pages the same way. You know I don't scroll to a lot of them. I just quickly glance. You know, everyone's busy, everyone's strapped for time. So as soon as you jump in here, you're like, wow, okay, all these benefits. You know, they've obviously got the colors right as well for their audience. And they've got multiple offers, social proof, 30 servings from 58p a day. They're just hitting, like, as I said, so many different pain points there in such a small amount of space.
Yeah, like, I hadn't heard of Real supplements before you mentioned them. And then, you know, obviously I was checking them out kind of in preparation from this webinar. And immediately, like, yeah, I could see exactly why you recommended them as a kind of best in class example. And the thing is, like, there's so much information there above the fold, but the way that they've designed that page and laid it out, it's not as if it's like crowded or overwhelming, or that you can't kind of take in all the information. Just the way that they put this together really is like a kind of beautiful example of a landing page and getting so much information across as soon as that person hits the page. So with that said, we'll just go on to the second example here. And this is from acquisition.com. So again, could you very briefly explain what acquisition.com do for those who might not be aware, Tom, and also just outline why you've chosen this as an example, you know, particularly with reference to B2B brands?
Yeah, so this is Alex Hormozi's brand, acquisition.com, and it's like a private equity firm who buys a stake in other companies and builds them up in terms of enterprise value. So kind of like a fund, equity fund that buys other companies. And the reason why this is so great is straight away you're getting data from your customers. If you're a B2B business and you're running a quiz style landing page like this, it's so powerful because you're going to get those emails, you're going to get that data straight away from your customers. So there's none of this guessing of like, is the quality of traffic I'm sending from Google ads, is it good quality? Is it the right customers that I'm sending? You know, do they have the right search intent? You're just going to get that so quickly with everyone that lands on here and everyone that goes through the quiz, right?
Yeah. And yeah, it's just like day one. When we're talking about, you know, people are going to have to find different talking points with cookies going away. But, you know, all the conversation was around collecting as much first-party data as you can. And although third-party cookies are going to be staying with us for a while, that's not to say that it's not super important to start collecting that first-party data as soon as possible and kind of build up the data that you've got there. So now I'm just conscious of time, so we'll just go through these final few slides quite quickly, and we're going to talk about minimizing waste through exclusions. So Tom, this post that is on the slide here was one of my favorite LinkedIn posts from last year. We shared it in a previous webinar that we ran, I think back in February this year. And I loved it because it's just so simple. It's something that so often gets overlooked, and it can lead to quite significant losses in ad spend over time if people aren't mindful of this. So could you briefly outline what the strategy is that's outlined in your post here?
Yeah, you might be thinking it's really simple, but honestly, was giving away some of my secret sauce here because this was just something that I was checking first thing whenever I was auditing account or whenever I was onboarding a new client. I was just going to the locations because it's such a quick win. If you're wasting money in locations that don't convert, it's such a simple, quick win to just exclude them. And whether that means in the US, different states, whether that means different countries in the EU, for example, whether that means even cities in your country, right? Especially if you're in like a massive country, you might want to focus your spend, especially if you don't have that much spend. You might want to focus it on a city that converts really well and then expand later on. So it's all about consolidation. PPCs talk a lot about that. And that's what I was really applying here with the location strategy. And yeah, it's just a no-brainer that just gets overlooked.
And this strategy was actually listed in your Google Ads cheat sheet, which has lots of other useful tips and strategies in it. And where can people get access to that cheat sheet if they're interested?
Yeah, so you can get all my cheat sheets in PPC Profit Lab, which is my almost free PPC community. It's on school, and you just have to pay $1 a month just to keep the conversations serious and make sure that people that are only committed to their growth actually join. But yeah, you can find all the cheat sheets and find me there to chat more about location strategy.
Nice. And before we move on from this slide, I just wanted to direct attention towards the right-hand side, where we've got some additional audiences you can consider excluding, as well as geographic locations. So those audiences might include job seekers, staff, retargeting audiences, and others. And one of the most popular blogs we've written here at Lunio is about how and why to exclude those kind of audiences from your campaign. So be sure to check that out. The link to that blog about audience exclusions is in the docs tab as well. Lastly, if you're looking for a useful free tool to help with the exclusion of fraudulent IP addresses, check out abuseipdb.com. It crowdsources IP addresses that have been associated with malicious activity online, and it provides a central blacklist to cross-reference against. Again, the link to abuseipdb.com is in the docs tab. So now, with that said, we'll very, very quickly just touch on negative keywords. So we're moving on from audience exclusions to talk about keyword exclusions. So Tom, could you very quickly just kind of explain in your own words why negative keywords are so important and how you use them in your accounts day to day?
Yeah, there isn't much to say aside from use them, use negative keyword lists, make sure that you're doing search query reports very regularly. And also, if you're getting a lot of keyword search terms that you need to add as negatives, a lot of irrelevant traffic, then it probably means there's an issue somewhere higher up the funnel, right? So you need to actually review, like, is the traffic the right quality, the right type of customers? So it's a good diagnostic tool as well, looking at search terms.
Nice. And just to help with that, you know, as I mentioned at the very start, we also have a recommended Ngram tool from Optio, which can make this process of managing negative keywords much easier. Basically, as you can see from the screen grab on the slide here, it will analyze and highlight any keywords in your campaigns which are significantly underperforming, so they can be added to a negative list, making it much easier to uplift your campaign efficiency and ROAS over time. If you're interested in trying that Ngram tool from Optio, you can get a 30-day free trial by following the link in the docs tab. And we've spoken now about excluding regions, audiences, keywords, but you should also aim to exclude low-performing placements to further enhance ROAS, especially when running PMAX and display campaigns. And at Lunio, we've got 2 free resources to help you here. And the first is our 40K PMAX junk placement exclusion list, which you can see on the screen here. And the second is our 100K display campaign placement exclusion list. You can find the links to download both of those exclusion lists in the docs tab. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go into much more detail here about the kinds of placements that we've included in those lists. You can find that on the landing page for each list. But basically, you shouldn't be running PMAX or display campaigns without some kind of robust placement exclusions in place, or you can be sure that you're inevitably going to be wasting some ad spend as you run that campaign. So on our last topic today, we'll briefly look at some data from a client of ours at Lunio, which highlights the downstream impact of blocking invalid and low quality traffic automatically with a tool like Lunio. So DeVry University are an online college based in the US, and they primarily focus on computer science and technology focused courses. And they were experiencing issues with low quality and fake student application submissions, which was wasting a significant chunk of their ad spend each year. So the graph that we're looking at here shows DeVry's invalid traffic rate for their Google paid search campaigns from October 2022 to October 2023. And as we can see, there is a big drop off in IVT across their first 3 months with Lunio. When they first switched Lunio on in October 2022, their average invalid traffic rate across paid search was 8.42%. And after a year with Lunio in place, that average was brought down to just 1.05% in October 2023. And this led to significant downstream benefits in terms of their cost per lead, which I'll talk about in just a second. But just to mention, first of all, if you are interested in finding out what your own current invalid traffic rate is for paid search, PMAX, and your other Google Ads campaigns, you can request a free traffic audit with Lunio, where we will monitor and analyze all the clicks coming from your Google Ads account. And at the end, you'll find out exactly where each of your campaigns stand in terms of invalid traffic. And then once you've got that data in hand, you can decide what you want to do with it from there. The link to request a traffic audit can be found in the Docs tab if you're interested. And one of the final slides, we're just looking at the results that DeVry achieved here. So comparing the data year on year from October 2022 to October 2023, the downstream benefits of blocking invalid traffic were reflected in the metrics that we can see here from DeVry, which they were kind enough to share us. They took the screenshot from the Google Ads account and sent it on to us. So they achieved a 13% increase in on-page conversion rate, 7% decrease in cost per lead, 11% decrease in cost per enrollment. So a really clear example of the kinds of longer term benefits you can see over time by automatically detecting and blocking IVT across your campaigns. And since then, the team at DeVry have been actively working with us at Lunio to beta test some of our new features and offerings, such as DB360 protection and automated IP blocking for PMAX campaigns. If you are interested to learn more about this case study with DeVry, you can check out the full link to that in the Docs tab. Before we open up the Q&A, Tom, I know you mentioned it previously, but again, could you just let people know about your PPC Profit Lab community and what they can expect to find there?
Yeah, so this is almost free community, as I mentioned. You only have to commit $1 a month just to keep the conversations serious and super valuable. So we have community contribution rewards. So I reward you for your contributions to the community. We've got people helping each other out in there, loads of PPC specialists, agency owners, freelancers, in-house. Yeah, so all sides of the table in terms of Google Ads. If you're running Google Ads, you're going to get massive value out inside the lab. And I just posted a full lab tour on my LinkedIn as a video. It's like a 5-minute video just going through like what you can expect to find inside. So head over to my LinkedIn, check out that post. It's going to be the latest post there. Yeah, see if you'd like to join. But I'd love to invite you to join the lab. I think you'd like it inside, and yeah, get a lot of value out of it. So I'd love to see you in there.
Nice. Thanks, Tom. So as I said, that's it for the content. And with the time that we've got left, we will run through a few of the questions in the Q&A tab. So I'm just going to see if I can share this on screen. One sec. It doesn't look like it's giving me the option to share the question on screen, but I will just read the question out to you, Tom, if that's okay.
All good.
So you got a question from Felix. He's asking, how do you optimize ROAS for B2B companies with long sales cycles? He thinks the best practice is using some earlier lead stages to optimize for those. Do you recommend that approach as well, or do you have a different approach for B2B companies with long sales cycles?
So what was his approach again?
He's saying using some earlier lead stages and optimizing for those kind of, I presume, earlier intent lead stages.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not quite sure like what he means by that, but with longer sales cycle B2B clients, what I would say the thing to get really, really clear on with the client is what is the average order value there? So like, is it going to be a 20K deal? Is it going to be a 1K deal? And then being super, super clear and narrowing down on that ideal customer. And you can do that by looking with your client at the previous customers they've had and go, right, who was a bit of a pain in the bum and not a great customer, and who was your favorite customer, you know, out of the last, say, 10, 100 customers that they've had, and then go after people similar to that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the next question that we've got is from Shika, and they ask, if I want to track funnel level abandons, should I track that as a primary or secondary conversion if it's an abandon?
I can talk from the perspective of like a cart abandon. I'm not quite sure what they mean by funnel abandon.
I think it probably will be a cart, abandon, yeah.
Yeah. So I would usually track it as a secondary. Depends on the business goals. You can do some cool stuff with that. For example, you can then target that. You can target cart abandoners with a retargeting campaign. That would be the best way to kind of use that data. But yeah, generally I would have it as a secondary conversion, because if you set it as primary, Google's then going to go after the cart abandoners, which might not be the right type of people to convert.
Yeah. One other question I see, let me just bring it up, is do you have thoughts on, or I suppose the way to phrase this question would be, what are your thoughts on broad match, Tom, and have you found it to be effective? And is there any advice you'd give when it comes to using broad match?
Yeah, it literally comes up in every single Q&A I do inside my mastermind, inside the free community. It just comes up every single day, and it's always a topic for discussion. And I would say a couple of years ago, I would only recommend it for accounts spending 100K plus if I was to generalize. But now it's a lot more hit and miss, where sometimes it will work for some smaller accounts, but unfortunately, I have to say it depends, and it's always a case of testing with broad match. I think it is getting a lot better. So if you tested broad match 6-12 months ago, definitely try it again. It's worth trying again because it's a very different product to what it was 12 months ago. Nice.
It definitely is the future, and they're spending a lot of money on it on Google Ads to push it more aggressively. So we've got a question from John, and they ask, I have an e-commerce store aiming for a certain ROAS to be profitable. What can I do if I can't achieve target ROAS through Google Ads? If I set up ROAS to my desired level, Google Ads will drastically reduce spend. So it's kind of like what to do if you're not hitting the target ROAS through Google Ads.
Sell more expensive stuff. Literally, if you have 10 products and they're going to be varying performance, right? So maybe you get a great ROAS on one that's £100. And this is something I see all the time where e-commerce brands sell like a really cheap product and it ruins their ROAS overall. So I would be really selective and just go, right, for the next month, I'm just going to advertise on my best performing product or my most expensive product. You could do bundles as well. That's a really good way to increase your average order value, therefore increase your ROAS. So you can bundle together your top 3, top 5 products. That can be a really nice way to boost average order value as well.
Nice. I'm just going to quickly, before we wrap up, I'm just going to address 2 questions that I see here that are best addressed through blogs that we've written at Lunio. So first question from John Smith, how do you exclude these types of first-party audiences? So I'm assuming, John, you're referring to the job seekers, retargeted audiences, staff, audiences like that. So if you go to the docs tab and you scroll down to the blog, which is listed as setting up audience exclusions towards the bottom in the documents tab, you'll be able to find the answer that you need there. And then we had another question from Anna, which was in relation to the 10 ad copy commandments. And one of the commandments was don't talk down to people. And Anna was asking, what do we mean by that? If you click into the docs tab and you go to the 10 ad copy commandments, you'll be able to see in a lot more detail than I'd be able to explain here what we mean by don't talk down to people. And there will be a few examples there for reference as well. So with that said, I think we'll need to wrap up there so we don't run over for time too much. But I just wanted to say a big thanks to you, Tom, for joining us today and sharing so many great insights and also really solid examples. And I think a few people there did appreciate the Tai Lopez classic. So that was great to see. Is there anything else you'd like to mention or direct people towards before we wrap up?
Yeah, so really appreciate it as well. It was a lot of fun. Really enjoyed it. With the Tai Lopez ad, whether you love him, don't love him so much, just take the principles, you know? You'll see the principles be used in every successful ad nowadays. It's not so much about I'm not saying go and shoot an ad with a Lamborghini, but take the principles that he uses, you know? Yeah, and I'd love to see you inside PPC Profit Lab. It's a almost free community where you can run ads with friends. And I was super lonely as a PPC freelancer, and I'm sure a lot of you struggle with that as well. So yeah, you really got nothing to lose. It's a no-brainer to come run ads with friends, get another set of eyes on your accounts, post some questions you had, and get a good discussion going. It'll always help you with some fresh ideas to come to, you know, your job, your clients, your accounts with. So yeah, I'd love to see you in the lab, and we've got the link on the right-hand side for that. Or you can shoot me any questions if you're unsure, if you want to follow up with anything from this session. Yeah, I'd be happy to chat about it. And yeah, thanks very much, guys.
Nice. Likewise, if you have any questions for us, you can contact us directly via hello@lunio.ai, and we'll be happy to help you out there. As I mentioned before, if you are interested in getting a demo of Lunio and a traffic audit to see how much of your Google Ads traffic is currently invalid, the link is in the Documents tab. Lastly, big thanks to everyone tuning in, either here at the live event or if you're watching back on demand. Hope to see you all again at our next webinar, which will be in September. More details on that coming soon. But for now, take care, everyone, and all the best with your Google Ads campaigns. See ya.
Cheers, guys.